In 1974, your Nan could walk into any butcher shop in Britain and buy a sheep's head for Sunday broth. Try that today, and you will get a police caution. Number 7 on this list was served at every village fete until 1989. Number 3 was the centerpiece of working men's club suppers until Brussels stepped in. And number 1 became a criminal offense to sell in 2001. These were not dangerous foods. They were traditions, perfected in terraced kitchens and farmhouse sculleries. But one by one, regulations swept them from British tables. Before we begin, hit that subscribe button, because what you are about to learn has been deliberately forgotten. Let's count down the 15 British foods that went from normal to illegal. Number 15. Unpasteurized milk delivered to your doorstep. The rattle of glass bottles on the front step meant the milkman had been. In the 1970s, nearly every household in Britain received daily deliveries of raw, unpasteurized milk straight from local dairy farms. The cream floated thick at the top, rich enough to spoon onto porridge. Children fought over who got to pierce that yellow layer first. By 1975, over 60% of British households still received doorstep deliveries, the milk traveling from cow to kitchen in under 24 hours. The taste was unmistakable, grassy and sweet in summer, richer and deeper through the winter months. Farmers knew their customers by name. Housewives left notes in empty bottles requesting extra pints for Sunday trifle. Then came the regulations. The Sale of Food and Drugs Act tightened. European directives arrived. By 1985, selling raw milk in shops became illegal in Scotland. England followed with severe restrictions. Today, you cannot buy unpasteurized cow's milk in any Scottish shop, and selling it in England requires jumping through hoops most farmers cannot afford. The doorstep delivery that defined British mornings has all but vanished, replaced by plastic bottles under fluorescent supermarket lights. Food scientists argued about bacteria. Farmers argued about livelihoods. But the families who remembered that cream floating thick at the top of the bottle knew something had been lost that no amount of regulation could replace. Number 14. Real beef dripping from the butcher's block. Before vegetable oil conquered British kitchens, beef dripping ruled supreme. Butchers rendered it fresh on the premises, ladling the golden fat into ceramic pots that housewives carried home like treasure. In 1972, a pound of proper dripping cost less than 20 pence and transformed everything it touched. Chips fried in dripping emerged golden and crackling. Roast potatoes turned crisp as toffee on the outside and fluffy as clouds within. Even spread on toast with a shake of salt, dripping was a meal in itself. The rendering process filled butcher shops with a rich, meaty perfume that drew customers from 3 streets away. Children pressed their noses against the window, watching the fat bubble and clarify. Regulations arrived slowly but decisively. New hygiene standards in 1990 required separate rendering facilities that independent butchers could not afford. European Union directives on animal byproducts tightened further in 2002, classifying dripping alongside industrial waste requiring licensed processing. The cost of compliance drove most small-scale rendering underground, then out of existence entirely. Today, what supermarkets sell as beef dripping is often a pale, industrially processed shadow of the original. The ceramic pots have vanished from kitchen windowsills. The butchers who knew how to render proper dripping have closed their shops. And a generation has grown up believing that chips should taste of vegetable oil rather than the Sunday roast. Every farmhouse in Britain once had bacon flitches hanging from hooks in the cold larder, cured on the premises with salt, sugar, and whatever secret blend of spices the family had perfected over generations. In the 1970s, farmers still cured their own pigs, rubbing the sides with dry cure and leaving them to develop flavor for weeks in the cool darkness. The bacon that emerged was nothing like the watery pink slices of today. It was dense and deeply flavored, the fat rendering crisp and golden in the pan. Cottagers and smallholders sold their surplus at local markets, each family's cure as distinctive as a signature. The smell of home-cured bacon frying could make a grown man weep with hunger. Children knew which neighbor made the best rashers and found excuses to visit at breakfast time. Then came the meat products regulations of 1984. Suddenly, selling home-cured bacon required licensed premises, registered processes, and inspections that no kitchen larder could pass. The Food Safety Act of 1990 drove more nails into the coffin. European hygiene directives finished the job. By 2000, the farmhouse bacon that had sustained rural Britain for centuries had become effectively illegal to sell. Farmers could still cure for their own families, but the market stalls and village shops that once groaned with home-cured rashers fell silent. The industrial processors, who filled the gap, produced something consistent and safe. But the depth of flavor, the variety of regional cures, and the connection between farm and table, all of it vanished into the regulatory void. In terraced kitchens across Britain, nothing went to waste. Sunday roast became Monday potted meat, scraps minced fine and packed into ceramic pots under a thick seal of clarified butter. That golden layer kept the air out and the meat fresh for weeks without refrigeration. In 1973, potted meats appeared on tea tables in nearly one household in three, a staple so ordinary it barely warranted mention. Housewives took pride in their own blends of pepper and mace, their perfectly clarified butter, their gleaming rows of filled pots cooling on the windowsill. The taste was intensely savory, concentrated and spreadable, perfect on thick slices of bread when the budget would not stretch to fresh meat. The regulations began with good intentions. New rules on shelf life and storage temperatures made sense for industrial producers, but strangled the home preserver. By 1990, selling potted meats required laboratory testing that no cottage industry could afford. The food hygiene regulations of 2006 classified home potted meats alongside commercial products, requiring the same facilities and documentation. The tradition of potting retreated to private kitchens, then faded entirely as the generation who knew how to clarify butter and judge the perfect seal passed on. Today, what supermarkets label as potted meat bears no resemblance to the rich, complex paste that once anchored working-class teas. The ceramic pots gather dust in antique shops. The skill of potting meat has become as obsolete as the coal fires that once warmed the kitchens where it was made. The Black Country knew faggots like no other region in Britain. Butchers mixed pig's liver, heart, and belly with onions and breadcrumbs, shaped the mixture into balls, and wrapped each one in lacy caul fat, the membrane that surrounds a pig's internal organs. That caul fat was the secret. It melted during cooking, basting the faggot from outside in, creating a crisp exterior and a moist, flavorful center. In 1975, faggot shops dotted every high street from Dudley to Wolverhampton. Workers queued at dinner time for faggots and peas, the gravy thick enough to stand a spoon in. The smell drifted through factory gates and terraced streets, announcing that proper food was being made by people who understood it. European regulations on animal byproducts changed everything. Directive number 90, 667, EEC classified caul fat as Category 3 material. Requiring special handling, the cost of compliance drove most traditional faggot makers out of business. By 2000, the shrink-wrapped faggots that appeared on supermarket shelves were bound with artificial casings or nothing at all, pale imitations that fell apart in the pan. The caul fat that had made black country faggots legendary became nearly impossible to source through legitimate channels. Today, a handful of artisan butchers still wrap faggots properly, operating in the grey areas of regulation. But the everyday faggot suppers that once defined Midland's working-class life have vanished, replaced by something that shares only a name with the original. Number 10. Sheep's head broth, cooked whole. In Scotland and the north of England, sheep's head broth was the ultimate expression of thrift. Housewives bought whole heads from the butcher for pennies, singed off any remaining wool, and simmered them for hours until the meat fell from the bone and the broth turned rich and gelatinous. By 1972, every traditional butcher north of the Trent sold sheep's heads, split down the middle and ready for the pot. The meat from the cheeks was considered a delicacy. The brains were creamed with butter and served on toast. Nothing went to waste because nothing could be wasted. The BSE crisis of the 1990s changed everything. Specified risk material regulations classified sheep's heads as potentially dangerous, requiring the removal of brain, eyes, and spinal cord before sale. The transmissible spongiform. Encephalopathies regulations of 2002 made it effectively illegal to sell whole sheep's heads for human consumption. The traditional broth that had sustained Scottish families through centuries of harsh winters became a memory almost overnight. Butchers who had sold heads by the hundred found their customers turning away, uncertain what was still permitted. Today, sheep's head broth survives only in the private kitchens of those who keep their own sheep, and the long memories of those who remember their grandmothers ladling the rich, meaty liquid into chipped bowls on cold winter evenings. Farm-made black pudding was once as common as bread in the north of England. Pig-killing day brought the whole community together, and the blood was caught fresh, mixed with oatmeal, onions, and back fat, then stuffed into natural casings and boiled or baked. Each farm had its own recipe, its own blend of spices, its own fiercely guarded secrets. In 1974, market stalls from Bury to Barnsley sold farm-made black pudding by the link, each batch as individual as the family who made it. The flavor was rich and earthy, nothing like the uniform industrial versions that would later claim the name. Children watched mothers stir the blood to keep it from clotting, learning skills that had passed through generations. The regulations arrived in waves. The fresh meat regulations of 1991 required licensed slaughter facilities that farm kitchens could not provide. European Directive 64433 EEC demanded blood collection under controlled conditions. The animal byproducts regulations of 2002 finished what earlier laws had begun, classifying blood as Category 3 material requiring tracked, documented processing. Farm-made black pudding became effectively illegal to sell. Today, what fills supermarket shelves is produced in industrial facilities under strict regulation, consistent and safe, but stripped of the regional character that made traditional pudding worth fighting over. The recipes that varied from village to village, from family to family, have retreated into private kitchens or vanished entirely. Number 8. Brawn set in natural jelly from the pig's head. Brawn was the dish that proved nothing need be wasted. Housewives simmered pig's heads and trotters for hours, shredding the meat and setting it in the natural jelly produced by all that collagen-rich connective tissue. In 1973, brawn appeared on cold supper tables across Britain, sliced thick and served with pickles and mustard. The texture was dense and porky, the flavor rich with herbs and pepper. Butchers sold it by the wedge, freshly made on the premises from heads that arrived whole that morning. Children often refused it, put off by the wobbly texture. But adults ate with relish, knowing that Brawn represented kitchen skill perfected over centuries. The same regulations that killed sheep's head broth wounded Brawn mortally. Specified risk material requirements complicated the use of pigs' heads. Hygiene regulations demanded facilities that small butchers could not afford. The traceability requirements of European law made small batch production economically impossible. By 2000, traditional Brawn had retreated to a handful of specialist suppliers and the private kitchens of those who kept their own pigs. Today, the industrial versions that appear in supermarket delis bear little resemblance to proper Brawn. The natural jelly has been replaced with gelatine. The slow, simmered richness has been sacrificed to efficiency. Another connection between animal and table has been quietly severed. The Women's Institute pork pie was once the crowning glory of every village fete in England. Members competed fiercely for the blue ribbon, their hot water crust pastry gleaming, their meat filling pink and heavily peppered, and jelly filled every gap with savory richness. In 1975, trestle tables at church fetes and village halls groaned with home-baked pies, each one made in a domestic kitchen by someone who had learned from their mother, who had learned from hers. The judges knew every entrant by name and remembered their previous year's efforts. Children hovered nearby hoping for the scraps when judging finished. The winners achieved local celebrity status. Their recipes were requested, shared, and quietly modified by rivals planning next year's assault on the title. The Food Safety Act of 1990 changed everything. New regulations required anyone selling food to the public to register their premises and comply with hygiene standards designed for commercial kitchens. Home bakers found themselves filling in forms, facing inspections, and navigating requirements written for factories. Many simply stopped. By 2000, most village fete pork pie competitions had been replaced with decoration-only categories, where the pies were judged on appearance alone and could not be sold or eaten. The skill of proper pie making retreated to private kitchens. The tradition of friendly competition that had driven generations of home bakers to perfect their craft faded into memory. Today, buying a pork pie means choosing between industrial products, each one identical to the next. The regional variations, the family secrets, and the fierce pride of the blue ribbon winner, all of it regulated into oblivion. Number 6. Tripe sold fresh from the dresser's shop. Manchester once boasted over 300 tripe dressers, specialists who transformed cow stomachs into the pale, honeycomb-textured delicacy that fed industrial workers by the thousand. In 1974, tripe shops dotted every northern high street, their counters laden with different varieties: blanket tripe, honeycomb tripe, book tripe, each requiring different preparation and commanding different prices. Housewives queued on Saturday mornings, selecting pieces for the week's suppers, discussing recipes with the tripe dresser, who knew every customer's preferences. The smell was distinctive but not unpleasant, a clean, milky scent that spoke of careful preparation. Workers ate tripe and onions in milk at dinner tables across Lancashire and Yorkshire, a dish that cost pennies but satisfied like a feast. European Union hygiene regulations struck the death blow. Directive 64/433 EEC and its successors classified tripe dressing as meat processing, requiring the same facilities and documentation as industrial slaughter operations. The cost of compliance was beyond most traditional dressers. One by one, the tripe shops closed. By 2000, fewer than a dozen remained in all of Greater Manchester. Today, supermarket tripe is imported, bleached white with chemicals rather than lime, washed in the traditional manner, stripped of the character that made northern tripe distinct. The working-class supper that once divided households, loved and loathed in equal measure, has become a curiosity rather than a staple. The last generation who remember proper dressed tripe grows smaller with each passing year. London's East End ran on jellied eels. Pie and mash shops served them in white bowls, the grey-green chunks of eel suspended in their own savoury jelly, ready to be doused in chili vinegar and eaten with a spoon. In 1972, eel stalls lined the markets from Petticoat Lane to Chapel Market, their owners arriving before dawn to prepare the day's stock. The eels came from the Thames and its tributaries, caught by fishermen whose families had worked the river for generations. Children watched the live eels slither in tanks, then turned away as they were dispatched, only to return eagerly when the jelly had set. The taste was rich and slightly muddy, pure London in every bite. Overfishing and pollution crashed the eel population first. By 1980, Thames eels had become scarce. Then European regulations classified the European eel as critically endangered, and Council Regulation number 1100 of 2007 imposed strict controls on fishing. The cost of legally sourced eels soared beyond what traditional stalls could afford. Import restrictions complicated supplies from other sources. One by one, the eel stalls closed. Today, only a handful of pie and mash shops still serve jellied eels, using expensive imports that cost 5 times as much as Thames eels once did. The casual East End supper of a bowl of eels and a cup of liquor has become an expensive, nostalgic treat, priced beyond the working families who once ate it daily. Number 4. Raw milk cheese aged in farm cellars. Before industrial production standardized British cheese, every dairy region had its own varieties, made from raw, unpasteurized milk and aged in farm cellars, where each location's unique bacteria contributed character and complexity. In 1974, Farmhouse cheesemakers still operated across Somerset, Cheshire, Lancashire, and beyond, their cheeses bearing the unmistakable stamp of place and tradition. The flavor varied not just by farm but by season, reflecting what the cows had eaten and how the weather had affected the milk. Connoisseurs knew which farms produced their favorite batches and planned visits accordingly. The cheese counter at any proper market offered a geography lesson in British dairy. European Union regulations on raw milk products tightened steadily from the 1990s. Directive 9246 EEC imposed pasteurization requirements that most small producers could not meet while maintaining traditional methods. The Food Safety Act and subsequent regulations increased paperwork and inspection requirements. Many farmhouse producers simply gave up, unable to afford compliance or unwilling to change methods that had worked for generations. Today, raw milk cheese production continues in Britain, but under such stringent regulation that only the largest and best-funded operations can comply. The small-scale farm cellar aging that once gave British cheese its extraordinary diversity has been regulated into near extinction. What remains is excellent but limited, a shadow of the variety that once filled market stalls from Cornwall to Cumberland. Burns night without haggis is like Christmas without pudding. Yet the haggis your grandfather ate has become legally problematic to recreate. Traditional haggis required sheep's pluck, the heart, liver, and lungs, minced with oatmeal, onions, and suet, stuffed into a natural stomach casing and simmered for hours. In 1974, butchers across Scotland prepared haggis on the premises, each one using lungs freshly removed from sheep slaughtered that morning. The texture was light and crumbly, the flavor complex and earthy, and the ceremony of addressing the haggis was taken seriously in every household that honored Scottish tradition. In 1971, the United States banned imports of Scottish haggis, citing concerns about sheep lungs. Britain followed a different path, but EU regulations on specified risk materials complicated matters considerably. The use of lungs in human food required strict processing controls that many traditional producers could not meet. Natural stomach casings became difficult to source through regulated channels. By 2000, most commercial haggis was made with artificial casings and reduced lung content, or none at all. Today, traditional haggis containing proper proportions of sheep's lung exists in legal grey areas. What supermarkets sell as haggis is often made with liver and heart only, lacking the characteristic lightness that lungs once provided. The dish that Robert Burns immortalized has been quietly reformulated, its essential ingredient regulated toward extinction. When a cow or sheep died naturally on the farm, nothing went to waste. Local knackers collected the carcass, processed what could be used, and returned what remained for burial or burning. Meat from freshly fallen animals often entered the human food chain through various routes, and it was perfectly legal until surprisingly recently. In 1975, farmers and their families regularly ate meat from stock that had died of natural causes, provided the animal had been healthy before death and the meat was properly handled. The economics made sense. A cow that dropped dead was worth nothing otherwise. The meat was often distributed to farm workers or sold informally to neighbors who knew its provenance. The BSE crisis changed everything with brutal speed. The Specified Risk Material Order of 1997 classified fallen stock as potentially dangerous. The Animal Byproducts Regulations of 2002 required all fallen stock to be collected by licensed operators and disposed of through approved routes that explicitly excluded human consumption. The local processing that had turned farm losses into food for generations became suddenly illegal. Today, fallen stock must be collected and disposed of at considerable expense to the farmer, with none entering the food chain. The pragmatic approach that had sustained rural communities for centuries was swept away in response to a disease that originated in industrial farming practices far removed from the traditional farmyard. Number 1. Unpasteurized wild game sold at the village market. At the top of our list stands the food that best represents everything Britain lost when regulation replaced tradition. In 1974, market stalls across rural Britain sold pheasants, rabbits, pigeons, and venison, prepared on the premises by gamekeepers who had managed the land for generations. Customers chose their game, watched it prepared, and carried it home knowing its exact provenance. Working families could afford wild meat that had cost nothing but skill and patience to obtain. The wild game meat regulations of 1995 began the transformation. European hygiene requirements demanded licensed processing facilities. Today, selling wild game requires compliance with regulations. Most small-scale hunters cannot navigate. The traditional market stalls have vanished. The rabbit that cost shillings in 1974 now costs pounds when it can be found at all. Across all 15 entries, these banned British foods tell a story that goes beyond nostalgia. Some regulations addressed genuine safety concerns, but others swept away traditions that had sustained communities for centuries, replacing local knowledge with distant bureaucracy and trust between neighbors with paperwork. No one reads. What vanished was not just recipes, but relationships, not just flavors, but skills. These 15 foods are the taste of a Britain that fed itself without factories and trusted its neighbors to prepare food worth eating. We will not see their like again.